Logic integration, and then we're going to have a demo of Full Circle CRM, a new marketing analytics tool. So excited about both. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. So I'm Dean. This is Dinesh at SnapLogic. Thanks for having us. I think the game plan is you're going to show a slide. I'm going to tell you what I think it is. All right. We have 4 slides.
That's right.
All right. I'm pretty sure I can cover this one. We are SnapLogic. We're going to tell you how we're unique in the industry, which is cloud integration, of course, how that can benefit some of you folks. I'm not sure if we're going to get as deep as architecture, so I'll kind of cover it at a very high level.
Just a few slides.
And here's the obligatory, this is our executive team slide, but there are some significant takeaways in that the gentleman at the top of the food chain here, Gaurav Dhillon, this is his second venture, SnapLogic. He's a former CEO and the founder of Informatica, a platform that, arguably won the data integration wars back in the client-server days when, IT directors chose to go with a commercial platform as opposed to building their integrations themselves, because every time there would be a new release to point A to point B, it would break. So with a commercial platform, that would solve that problem, but back then integration was relatively more simple, mapping columns and rows of one database to another behind the firewall over the LAN. So moving forward, he also struck up a conversation and a friendship with Mark Andreessen, who you may know as the father of the web browser and founded Netscape. The two of them sat on a board once Gaurav retired from Informatica, and they talked about the consumer web, the business internet, where we use Salesforce as opposed to Siebel, an application that's available through the cloud, which invites a new host of challenges for integration. How do I connect to the underlying data table of a rented website, like a NetSuite or Salesforce? And how do I connect that back to my relational database on-prem, as well as social media, streaming data? So a lot of new challenges, a lot of new platforms. So what the two thought to do is build a new platform based on today's cloud economy. And the great way to do that was to architect it on REST. REST is the platform that the World Wide Web and web services is connected by HTTP, post and gets. And in order to do that, he couldn't just go back and get the old band back together. So he brought in people who had deep backgrounds in new technology. So a lot of Web 2.0 guys. And the oldest guy right over here, Chris Wagner, actually has a business card that says Cloud Guy. And Mark Andreessen's business partner, Andreessen Horowitz, is a premier VC company in the Valley. They're the smart money behind a lot of cloud ventures that were B2C, like Skype and Twitter and Facebook, and now they're invested in B2B companies. So at one time, that gentleman actually was an intern for Chris Wagner right there. So that's kind of interesting, Ben Horowitz. But I think we've used this slide. We can move on.
Yeah.
We've accrued a couple of well-recognizable logos along the way.
We are 30 minutes. So.
Oh, really?
No pressure.
I can get this in under 45 minutes. So, you should be able to recognize a couple of logos here. And, as varied as logos are their use cases. So Best Buy has 600 applications, all of them homegrown. They're using us to connect all those different applications internally, ground to cloud kind of integration scenarios. Pandora has a 100% cloud ecosystem. Like most tech companies, they can afford to be and are more progressive, pioneering, and want to take advantage of the pay-as-you-go, switch when you want philosophy. So Mark Brennan, their IT director, looks at us as operating system for third-party applications where he can rip out one solution, say Marketo, marketing automation tool, with Eloqua in days as opposed to weeks. In fact, Fusion.io and Pandora, going IPO, switched out their financial applications in advance of doing so. So that's a lot of pressure and a lot of faith in us. UCSF Medical Center is the largest Salesforce.com installation. They use our solution to snap into their HL7 platform to be mindful of very privacy and high security for health and transaction records. We're able to help them with that as well. So I think we need this slide to death now too. So along the way, we did listen to our customers, and like I mentioned, our customers are varied, the use cases are varied, but the problems fall into about 4 different buckets. And if we begin with our legacy, actually, Informatica, client-server days, commercial integration platforms, that had its place as far as traditional ETL and enterprise service bus solutions on-premise, where you could really run your integration, like it's an emergency room in a hospital. High speed, no changes, it's going to work. But with the advent of software as a service delivery model, that invited the challenge that Garrett Dillon, SnapLogic, invited itself to the opportunity, and that's connecting ground solutions to cloud solutions. And then another bucket arose, and that is what I call the private cloud, social media. A lot of companies find a lot of value to understand their brand name sentiment in Facebook and Twitter. In other words, if you go to a hotel and there's an unmade bed, you could easily take a photo, put it on the World Wide Web. VPs of IT at these hotels tell me people don't complain to them anymore, they complain to the world. So they want to go from being reactive and knowing where in the world people are blowing up about their organization, positive or negative, to being proactive and knowing when Dinesh is driving by Outback Steakhouse and they have too much rhubarb pies on the windowsilling. So they're going to offer him a promotion as he drives by. And they need good integration to make all these happen. There's another bucket here, which is, over here is unstructured data, streaming data, unstructured data, structured data. And here's machine-to-machine data, where you have big data, largely coming from social media landscapes like this, that you need to do integration as far as reading data from sources of truth, aggregating that in a Hadoop cluster, and then delivering it downstream to some kind of reporting and analysis so you can start to do something with that data. So SnapLogic, being RESTful, is uniquely capable of connecting all these different environments and geographies.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is because there are various applications in different areas. If you see, there are a lot of ESPs, EI tools in the on-prem world. There are some tools which do the cloud-to-cloud after, but there's no single product which basically does everything. That's the value prop of SnapLogic, right? It's a single product storing for integrating or sharing the data among all the different sources you want in today's enterprise world, right? Whether it's on-prem, whether it's sitting in the cloud, whether it's social media, whether it's machine data. It's a single product which can do that.
It's a hosted application?
Yes.
Yeah, Cam, you could deploy it if you want behind your firewall. We package this transform technology as a lightweight server. So not lightweight as in it can't handle high volume, but lightweight as a lightweight footprint on your hardware, or if we spin it up in the cloud for you. Mm-hmm. And because we package it as a lightweight server, these servers can be clustered for either high availability failover or for greater throughput.
Okay. Having said that, we also have an option of deployment on-prem if you want to deploy this within your firewall. Right? You want the data, you don't want your data to come out of the firewall. Right. You can actually do that, right? So we have all that flexibility in terms of where you want to deploy this, whether it's in the cloud or whether on-prem.
So yeah, the significance of the last slide. You got a question?
Yes, I do. So is this similar pretty much to the BEA, but you have an Java client in the cloud? That's pretty much it.
Yeah, so it's actually a little bit more than that. It's a REST-based architecture. It's not a client, so the whole engine is built using REST principles. And when you see the demo, I think it's going to make more sense. But it's not a web app with a thin client in the cloud. Everything is in the cloud.
Yeah, so I think you did a great job with making the point that there are many other applications out there, enterprise service bus, ETL, that can do any one of those buckets quite well, and SnapLogic is uniquely capable as being that elegant solution to do everything else. Kind of replacing a lot of hand coding and custom coding that happens because the tools that we've inherited from the 90s aren't really built to handle the new environments of today. Got another question from the back, the guy looks exactly like that.
The last one, yeah. I see it. So the RESTful APIs, are there ways to set up the algorithms for it? Because would performance be an issue here? How do you address that in the algorithms?
Yeah, so we can go into detail, but at a high level, we basically optimize this platform to be highly performant. I mean, kind of throughput we can do is we can process like 1.5 billion rows in 3 hours. Those kind of throughput, which is a basic, pretty good for a typical ETL tool as well. But again, I mean, and I guess that's actually a good question, because looking at this solution, you would think it's basically a toy, right? You can do some cloud-to-cloud application, very small throughput and things like that, but that's not the case. This is totally an enterprise scale or grade solution which can scale both horizontally and vertically. And that's how we basically achieve those kind of throughput. You can basically scale it horizontally by adding more compute power.
So when I'm starting a new relationship with a customer, I have mid-market customers, enterprise customers with different use cases. So when it comes to scalability, we look at both price and performance, and we might start off with a cluster of 1 head node and then 4 execution nodes. And then we can kind of look at, if they're going to put it on their hardware, then their machines really are a factor that we don't know, and so many other variables. So we kind of start to look at it from that kind of approach and evolve with them. But
Which OS is it on?
So it supports both Linux and Windows.
People been doing installs?
Yeah. Yeah. Ubuntu and CentOS, Red Hat, basically. Yeah.
And I think the benchmark that you mentioned, 1.5 billion records that were written to a database in a span of 3 hours, was done with a cluster of 2 nodes, and that was done for one of our newer customers, Activision. And I think we might have time to show you one of their slides. They have a really, really cool use case. Essentially, there's gamers that play with their games online, and if they don't know what they're doing on the game, they drop off, which is not a really good experience. So they want to use big data clusters to gather information about each individual's experience and learn when to say, hey, Dinesh, put down the bazooka, maybe you want to use the handgun, something like that.
Yeah.
So definitely a lot of data coming out of
Is it
that.
doing cross-node synchronization on real time, or is it data specific to each node? How does it work?
Yeah, so actually, so we are in the middle layer in terms of pulling the data from there and very highly performant push the data to another system. So in this case, they use their own CRM, they call it GRM, Gaming Resource Management System. So we push the data to that particular system,
That's
and then they have the logic on top of that to basically mine the data.
Okay.
So our tool just pushes the data. It's basically the plumbing between those 2 applications.
Oh yeah, okay, I know this slide. So one of the principles of our solution that makes us unique is that we're a hub and spoke model, which means that we need to be able to connect to or read any kind of file, and also be able to allow you to build orchestrations in an environment that is a neutral canonical environment. It gives you a lot of ability as far as modular design for deployment, the ability to connect multiple endpoints very easily and quickly, as well as to build out the orchestrations quickly. And this abstraction layer, this design environment, allows you also to maintain these orchestrations in a real business agile kind of fashion. So if I use Pandora, for example, the company that has 100% cloud ecosystem, they originally came to us with 15 different unique endpoints, 15 different cloud solutions that they had written integrations to all of them, which comes out to a multiplication effect of 105 different unique integrations that they're both building and maintaining. So with our solution, we're able to connect to all those different commercial applications, web services, as well as a lot of germane files, and allow you to quickly snap them together, create your orchestrations, and then maintain them.
So I guess, the only differentiating factor, any data integration platform you look is going to have connectivity, translate, and just deliver, but we are unique in the sense that connectivity, right? So out of the box, we have 150 connectors. If you look at other data integration companies, they've been around for 20 years, and they just have 20 connectors. Right? Another is, in the delivery time, we do streaming, right? In addition to real-time batch, you can actually stream the data from one application to another application, because again, using the REST architecture we have within the engine. Right?
Delivery is something that is really setting us apart from the competitive fray here, because with the cloud economy having more endpoints and having more of a dynamic atmosphere, there's a lot less requirements for batch load scheduled events where everybody would pull data and then pump it into the mothership. Now they need us to listen to changes in one system and then replicate them in another system. So a lot of event-based triggers that we listen for and then we enable. I mentioned too that we package our solution as a lightweight server. Advantage for scalability is that we can scale like an app server, so we can scale out horizontally, dynamically, or we can do vertically based on throughput and performance and price.
And maybe another differentiator over there is the extendability, right? Because we have our open SDK to build your own snapshot. So let's say, for example, you don't have 150, we have 150 out-of-the-box connectivity to different apps, right? Let's say that's not listed or we don't support that out of the box. You can use this SDK and connect to your custom apps very, very easily. Because again, this is an open SDK for everybody to use. Not you can use it, or SIs actually use it to build custom snap for particular customers. And of course, we use it for creating more connectivity. Sorry.
Yeah, license model? By server, by endpoint, by...
Yeah, so a lot of procurement, departments that I've worked with, they prefer some kind of CPU pricing, but our pricing is an annual subscription. So like software as a service delivery model has their licensing. So what we do is we price the investment for SnapLogic server, which comes with out-of-the-box connectivity, as you just described, extensibility to these 140 different connectors for commercial apps out there like Salesforce and NetSuite, as well as the designer, the visual designer that comes with it. So that retails for list pricing of $48,000 annual subscription. And you can add to that if you have some kind of either high availability failover requirement, or if you have some bandwidth requirements that requires you to have more CPUs.
For the developers, what's the pricing? I mean, what's the structure for the developers if you're working with the SDK or the APIs?
So we could sell a CPU, a node, for a development environment, a quarter the price of the list price for the production environment.
And the related question is actually, so if you use our SDK, build a snap, let's say for application which we don't have out of the box, you can put that out in our Snap store, so it's an app store model, and actually you can get revenue from it if you sell it.
And it's more of a sandbox model, so sandbox for pricing, right? It's more of a sandbox model, like testing the environment and then you can deploy it.
Yeah, so I think we can work case by case basis, depending on what kind of snaps are you building and what is your, goal and things like that. But I mean, there's no standard as for, how we work with that. So we can work.
Yeah, so it'd be $48K annual subscription for SnapLogic server, and then it'd be 1/4 the price for another node for high availability failover or for sandbox environment that you're describing.
Yeah.
Then there are some snaps that we do charge a very nominal fee for. For instance, Salesforce.com connector is $3,495, our most popular one. Our most expensive connector is SAP, very robust connector. And that's a drop in the bucket towards compared to most people's SAP investment, right? I should say too that the connectors that we built, they're intelligent connectors. And we kind of stole a page from Apple's playbook here, where if you look at the iPhone versus, say, Research in Motion, the BlackBerry, one was a closed proprietary messaging system, another one embraced the World Wide Web. So when we download apps or games on their platform, they're not building Angry Birds. They have developers out there in the community that will build it for iPhone. So likewise, we don't have to build the connectors to all these third-party applications out there. And progressive companies want to go that way, but now there's hundreds, if not thousands of them. It would be impossible for SnapLogic to have a development team to do it. So we have an open API that snaps onto our platform, right? So what we'll do is we'll certify it, we'll QA it, we'll provide first call support. Most likely these will be free because it's advantageous to the developers, the ISVs, and the system integrators that are writing them today.
What's your turnaround time?
So a typical snap, and they vary from, requirements, right, is about 2 weeks. On I'd say the longest end would probably SAP, But some of these snaps were written, strategically by our company, and other ones were when customers will come to Dinesh and I and say, well, look, you got 4 out of the 5 connectors I need for my use case. Can you build that 5th one? Who's the vendor? Let's make the call to ISV. And, they want to write it to win more business and to keep the business of our customers.
figure out this integration point, like if I had to like build it into our system, we have a REST API, JSON based. Is there a discovery feature where I just point it at, the URL and give it the basic credentials and they'll just know what's there? But there's,
Absolutely. That's what we do is can introspect based on your API, and we can show that to you. So hopefully that gave you some initial idea. I'm going to very quickly do a demo so that give you a little bit more idea about how the product works, right? And then you can go. So for the demo, it's again from opportunity sales order. So if you close an opportunity in Salesforce, it's going to basically pull that, it's going to trigger SnapLogic behind the scene, and SnapLogic is going to pull that data, process the data, and create a sales order in NetSuite, right? So it's basically end-to-end business. So again, the way it works is we have concept of Snap, which basically snap into Salesforce. We pull the data in SnapLogic server, and there we do some processing with the data, for example, some data operations. You can basically do enrichment of the data, and then you can push that to data downstream application, right? So idea here is basically a hub and spoke model. It's not point to point. You can have multiple sources coming in, then you can massage the data, and then basically put the data out to multiple downstream applications. Okay?
when you massage data, you allow things like concat and what else? What else are the functionalities?
Various functionality. So anything you can think about in a data integration scenario, join, merge joins, or regex, string operation, data operations, you name it, right? So any kind of data massaging you do. We also have actually connectivity to data quality, so you can do data validation, for example.
What triggers?
Well, through our basically connection to, we have a partner called Trillium, which is a data quality company. So we can push the data to Trillium and basically get the cleansed data back, and then you can push the data to the downstream applications.
Okay. What about triggers inside there? So to meet certain conditions, then we can separate out, like basically programming logic. Can that also support inside there, or is it just the basic?
You can do filter, routing, everything. You can build very, very sophisticated business logic with all the pre-built functionality. The SnapLogic server. Let me actually show you the product a little bit. So this is the designer interface where you're going to basically create a business logic which you are talking about, right? So for example, I'm going to give you a very simple use case in which you're going to pull the data from Salesforce, opportunity object, and we push that data to an on-prem database table, okay? And how do you do that using SnapLogic? So in terms of the UI, there are 3 sections of it. You can see the foundry, that's where all the snaps lie. And the snaps are nothing but the connectors, adapters, or whatever you call them to third-party system, right? So in this case, because you're going to pull the data from Salesforce, I can come in here, type in Salesforce, and each of these snaps or connectors have wizard, right? So you can go through that to basically create a connection. So in this case, I would like to create a new connection, Salesforce. And once you put in your login credentials, what this snap is going to do is going to go and introspect, to your point, that particular Salesforce instance, and basically bring all the objects, whether they are custom objects, custom fields, into this interface, which are available for you then to basically drag and drop and create the data flow or pipeline or create a business logic. Okay? So I already did that. So once you finish, you're going to get something like this here at the top. Folder like this, Salesforce new, and you can see it has all the different objects which are in that particular Salesforce instance. And in this case, because you're going to pull the data from opportunity, I'll go to that. Even within opportunity, you can see we create the resources at the CRUD level, right? So you're going to have a resource for creating the data, a resource for deleting the data, and also updating the data. So in this case, because we want to pull the data from Salesforce opportunity, I can drag that over here, come in, and I can also do a preview of the data right here. So you know exactly how the data looks like before you start operating on the data, right? So in this case, it's going to the Salesforce instance, pulling the data from there, and you can look at the data. And because of our REST architecture, the other thing I wanted to point out here is that everything you do in this interface is a URL, right? So you can click on that URL, and it will show you the data. So again, it can RESTify your underlying application, right? So it can make them RESTful. So you can do a simple HTTP GET post using that URL and access the data which is sitting in your underlying application. And
What's the source behind that? You still have view source?
yeah, this is XML actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have
And
JSON feeds?
Yes, so that's another question. So you can actually, this is text, we can actually do JSON as well. So those are the two things we support, right? So you can get actually data as a JSON document out of those applications, okay? So once I have that, let's say I wanted to push the data to a database table, come in here, same process, type in DB, go to the database wizard. Again, you can see we support all the different kind of generic database connectivity, right? So everything is, in this case, I can choose MySQL. And once I enter all the information, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to go and introspect that particular database and introspect the schema and bring all the objects and tables for me to basically drag and drop and connect, right? That's one thing, and also it's not static, right? So suppose your underlying data model changes. So let's say you added another column in the table. You can come in here again and hit this suggest button at the bottom, and it's going to bring that additional column to that object. So that's available for you to basically drag and drop it. Okay. So in this case, I already did that, and I had a couple of schemas and multiple tables for the database. So I'm going to come in here, and because I want to insert the data, I will drop tag over here, and then basically simply connect these two. And for the connection also, we built a little bit more intelligence that we do fuzzy name search, so you don't have to connect one by one each of the column. And we do learning also based on your past connection you made between these two objects. You can hit apply, save, and then you're actually ready to run this pipeline. So we call Dataflow pipeline. Right? So in this case, it's going to pull the data from opportunity and put that in a database table on-prem. And again, very simple example, very small data set, but things like that. You can also look at the statistics, how the data, so in this case, it pulled out 68 records from the Salesforce opportunity object and put that in a database. In this case, I ran this manually, but you can also schedule this flow. There's a capability to notify on each of those runs and things like that. So again, a very simple example, very high level in terms of the functionality which is there. Very simple data integration as well. But you can see you can do a lot more things, to your point, a lot more business logic, with a lot of pre-built functionality in here while the data is going from the source to the targets.
Do you want to get into an example of where you would tee the data? If you basically like, okay, I want half the data over here and half over here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very simple like filter here. So you can do filter, right? So based on, let's say, some field, you can route that to one output view or there's another output view. So that's simple as that, right? So let's say in this case, my field is game status, and if that has this value, route it here. Otherwise, you can add another filter condition, route it there. So it's very straightforward to do route. I think our time is up.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Good questions.
Yeah, just wondering what, you showed that suggest button, which is really nice. But what happens when something changes and you're expecting data to come over, and also then is there a way to enforce like referential integrity or something like that, so you can sort of have an alert like, hey, this is breaking a snap? With Salesforce, for example, someone kills a column, right? What happens?
Yeah, so again, you can do multiple ways. I mean, there's a notification capability here. If a particular data flow fails, let's say that column is not there anymore in Salesforce, and you basically run this pipeline, it's going to fail. So you can get an email notification that this particular failed, right? And
So
then you
it
can
just
go
fails right away. It doesn't give you partial data. It just says, no, this is broken now.
Well, it will give you partial data, but if you're using that field to do some operations in here, like for example, a string operation or something, it's not going to find that data and it's going to fail. But if you're not using for that, yeah, it's going to still pull the rest of the data.
Can you configure so that we do a hard stop?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, the next point is that you can actually design a logic in this so that it gives you those kind of notifications, right? So again, there's nothing pre-built in the system to do that, but you can design your process to basically give you that kind of notification.
And presumably we can save these little objects that we build and copy them and move them around, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, save as, so everything is reusable here, right? So each component is reusable, each Dataflow is reusable, so you can call pipeline within pipeline and all that stuff, right? So anything you can do in a programming language, you can do it.
Do you have to use the GUI, or can you actually type it in?
GUI, for what, I'm
Well,
sorry?
you're using a GUI now, do we have to use the GUI, or can we just type it in what we want to do?
Oh, you mean not using the designer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so everything you see here is coming through what we call a snappy or API to our system. So you can actually use those API and make calls directly, right? You can, create this kind of pipeline in your Java program using that snappy. Thank you. Anything else?
No, that's it. Good job.